Have some fun. Welcome, everybody. We are here in the Ecstatic Business Show with GiGi. You can find her on Instagram at GiGi Eats. She is known as the Salmon Queen, and we are going to be talking about how she has been living a ketogenic carnivore diet long before it was trendy and fashionable to do so, and talking about her story of transformation. So join us as we think through your nutrition and how you can optimize your health and how your health is going to allow you to be the best leader, business owner, wife or mom, whatever it is that you're doing in your life, and making sure that you're operating at peak performance. So welcome, GiGi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And that was such a nice introduction.
I love it. So what I'd love to do is kind of start with your sacred success story, right? How did you become this nutritionist focused person? And usually for us, that starts with, when did things not go so well? When did you have your crash and burn, let's be the phoenix rising from the ashes moment? So tell us a little bit, as vulnerably as you feel comfortable sharing, what was that turning point for you?
Yeah, so I have to say the turning point was probably when I was about 14 years old. I was actually kicked out of my house by my parents and moved on to boarding school. And believe it or not, my boarding school was for snowboarding. So I was competitively snowboarding at this school. I was on the Colorado State snowboard team. And when I was there, you do a lot of hardcore training. There's a lot of dry land training in the summer and the fall months. And then in the winter, obviously, you hit the mountain every single day. You're hiking the half pipe. You're hiking the terrain park and all that sort of stuff. And I started taking note about how I was feeling. Prior to the age of 14, I was eating cookies, cakes, all the jazz. When I would go to my friends' houses, because I actually was raised in a very healthy household. My mother is a doctor, and she actually always had like the diet trend books all over the house. So I was always kind of like paging through them, but also not really caring, because at that age, you don't care. Right. But anyway, so I went to boarding school. I started to really not feel good, taking note of my body and how it was processing specific foods. And then my mom sent me one of her books. There was no book jacket on or anything like that, but fast forward to today, if you read this book, you'd realize it was a ketogenic lifestyle book. So it was telling you to eliminate the grains and even eliminate dairy and all that type of stuff. So I was taking that into consideration and adopting some of the stuff that the book was telling me to do. And believe it or not, I started to feel better. Obviously I did go through a phase where I had anorexia because I was eliminating too many things. And I really was unsure as to how much I should eliminate and how much I should keep. It's all a process of elimination, and it's all trial and error. And it's also all about being your own guinea pig, if you will. And that's something that I really take to heart, if you will. I always think to myself, you got to be your own guinea pig. Everyone's out there buying all these diet fad books like, oh, this one's going to work for me because it's worked for everybody else. But it's not like that. There's no one size fits all plan. Everyone is so genetically made up differently that, I thrive on a ketogenic and carnivore lifestyle, whereas I have friends who thrive as being vegans. And I'm never going to say that they're doing something wrong for themselves, because they know themselves better than anybody else. So learning back when I was 14, things that really worked for me and really didn't work for me was insanely beneficial as I got older, because then I was also diagnosed with ulcerative colitis and Crohn's. And I also have IBS, which I feel like a bajillion people on this planet have as well at this point. But I have been able to control it enough that it's not detrimental. But there are times where it really sucks. And, one thing that I feel like people get tied up in when they have digestive issues and they get embarrassed. But at the end of the day, everybody digests their food. Everyone goes to the bathroom. So you have to just be confident enough that, if your spouse is wondering what's wrong with you, just tell your spouse, hey, I'm constipated today.
One of my favorite children's books is Everybody Poops. This is one of our universals.
You may just want to not be around me right now. How about that? So I feel like that's a huge problem with a lot of people. They just don't want to talk about their issues. But I'm the type of person that talks. I talk a lot. So, I went to school, boarding school, as I said. Then I went to college, and that's sort of when I was coming out of my anorexia phase. But I went to college knowing that I wanted to be an entertainment reporter in Los Angeles. I had always wanted to move to LA. I wanted to be an actress initially, but I was like, I can't act, let's be honest. So I instead focused my energies on being the host of E, that sort of thing. And plus, with my type of personality, I can't act like anybody else but myself. So that really just like pushed acting out the door. So I moved to Los Angeles, but actually I failed to mention a huge part of my life. When I was in college, I had something called a cecal volvulus. So I had my large intestine removed, and they don't really know why exactly, but I'm pretty sure I ate something, or there was some food that was tainted with ingredients that just do not agree with me, that caused this intestinal twist. So when that happened, my doctor was like, oh, you're never going to have any intestinal issues ever again, which was completely false. He totally lied. But he also recommended I take something called Miralax for like the rest of my life. So with my sort of addictive personality, I started, then I kept on increasing the dosage because your body gets used to it, to a point where I was taking eight servings a day. And when I met my husband, when I moved to Los Angeles, I had an instance where it made me feel as if I was having the intestinal, the cecal volvulus, which is intense pain. I've had 2 children at this point, and prior to having 2 kids, I always put them on the pain threshold on an even playing field. I have to say that the pain is pretty much similar to having contractions like you're going to give birth. So it was just some of the most horrific pain I've ever felt in my life. So, so I had this instance, and after that, I told myself that I was never going to use Miralax ever again. And then when I stopped taking Miralax, I actually started getting my periods back, and I actually wound up having 2 children. Because I was told I could never get pregnant due to all of my issues. But when it comes down to is Miralax is actually the thing that was causing the issue. Which is very fascinating. Anyways, so, I think that I can attribute me and my coming to, be who I am with my mental toughness. I was born with the willpower of, I don't even know who I could compare it to. I don't eat XYZ QRS, and I don't even look at those things. A lot of people are gluten-free or whatever, but then they think, oh, well, this little cupcake isn't going to do anything to me. Or if it does, I'll just deal with that later. No, I don't do that. I can't eat meat. I can't eat dairy, gluten, sugar, soy, fruit, nuts, eggs. You name it, I basically can't eat it except for salmon. Salmon is the one food on the face of the planet that makes me feel so damn good. It gives me all my energy. People ask me why my skin is so clear, and I'm like, it's salmon. And where my energy comes from, it's salmon. I like right before this podcast, I had salmon, believe it or not. That being said, I do eat other fish, and I do eat grass-fed beef. I do eat some chicken. I do eat I think that's kind of it, actually. I'm like, what else do I eat? I recently got rid of eggs because I had noticed that when I consumed them, maybe a day or so later, I would have the worst debilitating stomach pain. And I just one day was attributing the fact that I would eat it, and then a day later, I would always feel that way. So I was like, okay, I'm going to cut out eggs and see what happens. And believe it or not, that's what happens. Just like broccoli, for instance, I would eat broccoli, and 3 days later, I would be so tired, like could not get off the couch tired. Granted, I always forced myself because I always pushed through the pain. But it's just people are not in tune with their bodies.
Right.
Thus, they think X, Y, and Z is wrong with them. Yet it could really just be the tiniest little switch, but they would never know because they're so quick to think, oh, it's this because they WebMD'd themselves or whatever. And they go to the doctor, they get a drug, and then this drug causes 45 other problems. and then they
Yeah.
need another drug, and so on and so forth. I don't take any drugs for any of my issues. I do everything naturally. My husband even is like, oh, if your back hurts or if you have a headache, like take a ibuprofen.
Right.
Which, by the way, I never really ever get headaches, but once in a blue moon with the seasonal changes, it sometimes happens. But I never take those things. I'm like, you know what? Tomorrow's a new day. I'll sleep it off and I'll be totally fine. Or, I know when my hormones are being wonky and I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to have to deal with it for a week, and it is what it is. Yeah. So again, I think my mental toughness and my willpower and honestly, the way that I was raised really has affected how I basically view the world and how I accomplish tasks that I set forth to myself. Because when I moved to LA, I had this whole ambition to be this entertainment reporter. And I started a website and a YouTube channel, and I later started my Instagram account and all that kind of stuff. And I was talking about diet and fitness trends of celebrities and how stupid they were. And then I was recommending, the lifestyle changes that people should make. But at the end of the day, I don't really care about celebrity lives. Like I did it. I actually was an entertainment reporter at E! I was an entertainment reporter for various outlets. I got to interview Denzel Washington and meet Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie and all of those people. Like, I don't get starstruck with those people. I get starstruck with the people who actually are intelligent in the health and fitness space. And also, when I was in Los Angeles, it started to shift from, praising the actors and actresses of TV shows and movies to praising these know-nothing people on reality TV shows that they didn't do anything amazing other than potentially coming out with a sex tape or whatever it is. Right. So I don't care about you. So it made me shift my focus on my blog to who I am and what my lifestyle is like and the products that I have been using, because back then, even 15 years ago, keto and carnivore wasn't really a thing either. People were just coming on to what stevia sweetener was and thinking it was a drug and it wasn't allowed to be sold in the United States, sort of thing, to now, things are sweetened with stevia and no one even thinks twice about it. So it was a fascinating transition, because I started talking about these things and people started catching on to it, and they really enjoyed my humor and my energy as well as my enthusiasm towards this lifestyle. And also, other people started to come out of the woodwork saying that they had experienced the same sort of pain and ailments that I had experienced and was currently experiencing. Because as I said, I haven't cured everything. And they loved the fact that I was talking about it. I basically gave them a voice. And then I am the type of person that literally talks to every single person who messages me. So I've had conversations and I built relationships with these people that I still have relationships with today. And in fact, these relationships have helped me build my business of, I hate the word influencer, but I'm just going to use it because I started in the blogging space where I was, quote unquote, influencing people to make better choices, but I never shove things down people's face or throat, if you will. I tell them, if you have questions, if you have comments, concerns, whatever, then by all means, you can ask me and I will give you my perspective. But you take it or you leave it. I don't really care what you do with it, but this is how I feel. This is what's worked for me. If it works for you, amazing. But as I said before, there's not a one size fits all. So there you go.
So let's go into that. I know what I'm hearing is the first recommendation is just listen to your body. Pay attention to how you're feeling when you eat. Notice how you feel in the next 24 to 48 to 72 hours, right? So pay attention to how you're feeling, your responses to your food. Do you do a journal, or what do you recommend in terms of starting to track your experience of nutrition and digestion?
Yeah, I mean, I had a journal. I used MyFitnessPal back in the day, not to count calories or anything like that. It was more just to keep a record of what I was eating. But this was long ago. Now, I just know my body, and I have such a limited diet that I literally just eat salmon for every single meal. Like, I can't get enough. My body just craves it. I just ate it, and I want more. But I would recommend downloading MyFitnessPal and just, tracking the foods that you're eating. I mean, it's also a great tool for, people who want to count calories or macronutrients or whatever your goal might be. I think it is probably the most accurate app on any iPhone or whatever phone you have, smartphone, that's the word I'm trying to look for. Because I have downloaded other ones purely because people come to me for weight loss advice. And so I'm curious and I want to play around with the other apps like Carb Manager or whatever. And they have vastly different calorie counts on there. And I remember telling a bunch of people, like, get rid of your carb manager one and just get MyFitnessPal. And they unlock losing 5 pounds within, a month. So it's crazy the caloric differences that these apps have. But it also goes to show you need to look at the labels before you just rely on an app on your phone. So that's what I did. And then I weeded out. Is that a word? Weeded? So yeah, I basically just navigated through the foods that I was eating and I realized the things that don't work versus do work. Like back when I first started my blog, I had a vastly larger diet, if you will. Like I was eating coconut flours and coconut butter and all that kind of stuff, because when I was doing my blog, I was also creating allergen-friendly recipes. And a lot of allergen-friendly recipes are baked goods because a lot of people love sweet treats. Thankfully, I don't have sweet tooth at all. Like I actually really hate sweet food. So I'm a salty kind of person. So I don't eat sweets at all. I'll drink Zevia. That's like my sweet of choice, if you will, which is, a soda, but it's sweetened with Zevia. And it comes in a variety of flavors, but I don't like fruity flavors. So yeah, I'm very limited on my taste sensation.
So if we're talking to female entrepreneurs and they're not feeling fantastic in their bodies, what are your top 3 recommendations? Where should they start paying attention and shifting and experimenting? If they do want to have more energy, clear the brain fog, feel sexier in their bodies, what do you recommend?
Absolutely. I mean, if you are a female entrepreneur, the number one thing you need is confidence. And if you don't feel good in that body, you ain't going to have confidence. That's for sure. So my number one tip, go take a walk outside. It'll clear your brain. Quit sitting in this chair and typing on your computer all freaking day. First of all, I have a stand-up desk. I do not let myself sit down until like 6 p.m. at night because I also am just crazy energetic and I always need to be moving and doing things. I feel like that's my ADHD or whatever. But number one, I would say take a break from work, go take a walk, clear your mind, and then you can come back refreshed to get your more work done. Plus, getting steps in, not a bad thing. I love getting my steps in. So anyway, that's kind of my number one thing. Secondly, we're going to turn to food. And I would recommend that you at least write down what you're eating for 3 to 5 days. And I mean everything that goes in your mouth, from food to multivitamins to the little bit of gummy bears that you ate off your kid's plate, whatever it is that you're putting in your face, you write that shit down. Because little bits add up here and there. I hear the common thing of like, oh, well, I finished my kids' leftovers last night because there was such little amount left that I just wanted to eat it. Well, those calories add up, and those calories may not have been the best fuel for your body. So we have to take note of all of that. And then after the 3 to 5 days, you can really evaluate it, whether, throw it into my DMs and I'll check it over and I'll let you know which foods might potentially be triggering specific symptoms that you have. Or you can do the dirty work yourself and say, for instance, you keep eating wheat thins every day at 3 p.m. because that's your snack of choice. Well, you can Google, the problem with wheat and gluten, and you can see the symptoms that typically occur when you eat gluten. And if they line up with your symptoms, you might have a gluten intolerance. And if you do, maybe get rid of the wheat thins and replace it with grapes, or, replace it with a protein-filled snack like a hard-boiled egg if you do not have an egg allergy. So that would be my second tip. And then my third tip is communication. So if you live in a house with a husband and 2 children, or, if you have a wife, whatever sexual orientation you have, speak to your partner. Tell them about your day. make
Mhm.
sure they're listening to you, and
Mhm.
make sure you're getting what you need from them. And you need to tell them what you need. They can't read your mind. So
Yeah.
you have to tell them. I know when I'm feeling a little down in the dumps, it's because I'm not getting my needs met from my husband.
Mhm.
And you know how I get my needs met? I meet his needs. So
Mhm.
I think back, oh, maybe I'm not exactly doing X, Y, and Z that he's asked for in the past, which is
Yep.
why he's not doing X, Y, and Z for me.
Mhm. Yep.
And if you feel like, okay, I am doing X, Y, and Z, well, then more often than not, your partner is in their head about something else. So you need to say, hey, whatever, pet name you have for your spouse, let's have a chat. Let's check in with one another. Let's see what's going on and determine if you're okay, if you're not okay, if you're happy, unhappy, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And my husband and I have the most open line of communication. We tell each other literally everything. We have
Mhm.
an 8-hour rule that if either of us is pissed off at one another for some stupid reason, we have to discuss it within an 8-hour time frame. And if we go outside of that 8-hour time frame, it is a moot point and you got to move on.
Yeah.
So and usually if we have some sort of issue, it's like, you didn't feed the kids when you said you were going to. Like, it's something so stupid that it
Yeah.
was basically a non-issue. Um,
Mhm.
so that would be my third thing. You need to talk. You can't keep things in because you will eventually explode.
Mhm. I love this. Okay, so if we want to start optimizing health, the first thing is get out into nature. Take a walk, clear your head, get your body moving, which I love. It's beautiful. The second one is pay attention to what you're eating. What are you consuming and how do you feel? And the third one is communication, which I feel like we sometimes don't think about it as an aspect of health, but that psychological connection with our partner, with our loved ones, really is the foundation for everything else that we're building. So I really love that.
Yeah.
I want to open it up for questions for those of you guys who are listening in. If you have questions for GiGi, drop them in the chat. For me, I'm curious. You found salmon, and I know that you say, you know what, eat what makes your body feel good. But are there certain things that most people should start considering eliminating, at least as a trial period? Like, get rid of this for a week, for 2 weeks, and just kind of test it out. What are some of the top uh, things that a lot of people need to be paying attention to?
I would say number one is dairy. A lot of people don't realize that they have a dairy intolerance.
Mhm.
More often than not, people eat like some ice cream and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I have a stomachache now, or I have to run to the bathroom, or whatever. It's like, well, obviously there's a correlation there, people. But
Mhm.
the problem is people tend to love the food too much that they're not willing to give it up.
Right.
And honestly, I don't feel like that's smart. I think
Mhm.
at least try and give it up for 3 to 5 days and see what happens.
Right.
And if you feel like, okay, now I feel less bloated and I feel
Mhm.
less tired and the baggies under my eyes aren't there anymore. Well, sorry guys, but dairy may be the problem. That being said, there's so many dairy alternatives out there these days that like you'll be fine if you need your ice cream. Uh,
Mhm.
but at the same time, my second recommendation would be to try and eliminate sugar. Sugar is a huge culprit for so many issues, not just, type 2 diabetes and obesity and all that kind of stuff, but it really messes with your mental health,
Mhm.
really messes with it. And then you get this addictive personality too, because all you want is the sugar. And then
Right.
it makes your blood sugar, raise and fall really fast. So then you get in a snippy mood when your blood sugar is crashing and because you just need more food.
Mhm.
And no one likes a hangry person. Trust me, I can get hangry once in a blue moon and it ain't pretty. But it's
Mhm.
not because of sugar consumption, because I actually don't eat sugar in its true
Mhm.
form. I eat salmon, and the only carbohydrates that I eat are spinach and butter lettuce. So the little bits of sugar that are in those things. Um, so my fall in terms of blood sugar is really, really slow. But
Mhm.
my husband, he is autistic and his food focus is not on food ever. So he'll go like, he'll not eat 3 meals. And I need 2 meals a day. If you don't give me 2 meals a day, we're in trouble. So he'll sometimes push my buttons, not on purpose, but just because like he doesn't think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh God, you don't want to be around me. You need to feed me right now. And it's really funny because a lot of my friends are like, oh, it's Gigi's feeding time. I'm like, yes, yes, it is. So yeah, so the two things that I would really recommend is eliminating dairy and eliminating sugar and seeing what happens. And then also eliminate the toxic people in your life. Now that one's a little harder than I'm saying it right out off. I can't, what am I trying to say? It's a little easier said than done. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Because obviously some people aren't aware of the toxic people in their lives. They think that this is just the norm to be treated this way until they have this epiphany moment where it's like, oh, I'm not supposed to be told that I'm a piece of shit every day. Like that's weird. So getting rid of toxic stimulus is also something that's very, very important, whether it be, you know, maybe your spouse is in a crappy mood that day. Just walk away. You know, that's their own thing they're dealing with. And it has nothing to do with you. You are not the source of their happiness. They are the source of their happiness. So they need to deal with it. And you can just come in later and check in on them. If they're still in a crappy mood, just remove yourself. Do not take it personally. So yeah, it's that sort of thing. All the way up to like, you know, if your boss is being an asshole to you literally every single day, well, then maybe you might want to consider a different job because you're not being taken seriously and or respected.
Right. Yeah, I love this. Okay, so we had already mentioned gluten. Gluten tends to be a frequent one, but you've mentioned dairy. Get rid of dairy, get rid of sugar. See how you feel when you start eliminating these top 3 things that a lot of people have and maybe don't even realize that they have intolerances for. And then I love this one, toxic relationships. So thinking about, it's not just food that we ingest, right? It's words, it's energy. And so paying attention to everything that you're ingesting in your environment and saying, hey, how do I feel in response to this? How do I feel when this person speaks to me or when I see this person's name on my phone, right? What is that emotional response that I'm getting? And how do I pay attention to that, just like I'm paying attention to my responses to my food? So I love that there's this thread in the work that you're doing. We had one question. Miriam asked, what do you say to yourself? Now you mentioned that you have phenomenal willpower and innate discipline, but how do you handle that inside conversation? Or what would you encourage somebody who maybe doesn't have that same willpower and discipline to coach themselves through this transition into a different?
I would say if you do not have willpower, it would be very smart to have an accountability. I am the type of person that I'm self-motivated. I'm self-regulated. I just, you know, I don't need anybody else and I go, go, go. And some people, for instance, my husband kind of sees that as a negative because he he wants to help. And I never really ask for his help. And honestly, that's kind of like the only problem in our relationship is he wants to help me, but I never ask him for help. So he's like, you don't need me. And I'm like, no, I need you for other things. So anyway, so back to this question, an accountability buddy is very, very important. So like if you're at the grocery store and you're faced with the Oreos that you really want to purchase, but you know you shouldn't, like whip out your phone and text message your accountability buddy and be like, oh my God, I really want these Oreos, but I know I shouldn't. And I almost feel like just writing that message to your friend and pressing send will enable you to walk away. I know for myself, if I'm dealing with something internal mentally in regards to relationships, not food wise, because I've been living this way for so long that food does not affect me in this way whatsoever. My lifestyle is my lifestyle and there's no other way. There's literally no other way in my brain. My husband will be like, why don't you have like this little thing with sugar on it? I'm like, no, what, why? Like that's not part of my life. So anyway, what I love doing if I'm mentally struggling with something is I will be on the elliptical and I will write like a note to myself or a letter to myself, if you will. And I will just detail everything going on in my brain and how I'm feeling. And once I'm done writing, it's like, oh, weight lifted off my shoulders. I am good to go for the rest of the day. My head is clear. I can focus on other things, and all is right with the world.
So that third point that you mentioned about communication, it's not just with our partners, with our loved ones, it's also with ourselves. Are we in communication and dialogue with, our subconscious, our superconscious, and going through there?
Absolutely.
Miriam has a follow-up question. Do you have a written diet program? So are you advocating a certain lifestyle? I know you've written a couple of books. I want you to tell me about those, and then we'll make sure people know how to find you and connect with you. But what are you recommending? And tell us about your books.
Well, first of all, I would never call it a diet. I call it a lifestyle, just because diet has this negative connotation with it. And people are like, oh, diet. Okay, I can live this way for, a month and I'll lose weight and then I'll be, totally fine to go back to my eating regime from before. But that is not the case. If you want to be healthy, you need to adopt a lifestyle that is, I'm going to say sugar-free, or zero added sugar-free, because I just believe that mentality alone will make you feel better about adopting a new way of life. Because again, the word diet just has such a negative connotation. Now, the diet that I live, this ketogenic carnivore, you can call it a ketovore lifestyle, but I'm a little more carnivore these days than anything else, just because protein and fat are my godsend macronutrients. So whenever people come to me for advice, I always ask them again for their diet from the last 3 to 5 days. Then I ask them the foods that they just cannot live without, because again, like I don't see it as a one size fits all. So I'm not going to say, hey, you just need to be carnivore and that's it, because some people cannot eat 3 pounds of meat a day. It's implausible for them. Like, I eat for a family of 20. I eat the biggest portions ever because I do work out a lot. I'm very active and stuff, but everybody has their different way of doing things. So I do say, however, rely heavily on protein, animal protein. Obviously, if you're a vegan or a vegetarian for religious reasons or because you love animals, I understand, and I can work with that. But I truly believe the second you increase your protein consumption, you will not crave sweets. You will not. You will not be hungry. I only eat 2 times a day. I do not snack. I drink my Zevias throughout the day just because I don't drink water. I hate water, so sorry, not sorry. But like, when I am not eating a meal, I don't even think about food. I think about my work. I think about career. I think about my family. I think about the things that are actually important in life. And then, when it's an hour or 2 before mealtime, then I start to think, ooh, salmon time. Yay. Because food does, in fact, bring me joy. And part of my work and career, if you will, is creating recipes. So I do have to think about food, but I think about it in a different way than I'm on a diet. So I've got to eat this little tiny salad with the tiniest piece of chicken on it, and I have to pretend I'm satisfied. Like, that shit doesn't work. No, not even a little bit. And I would never recommend, hey, you need to have this tiny little chopped salad with 3 ounces of chicken. I'm like, no. In fact, you should have 10 ounces of chicken and maybe 5 green beans. I'm kind of the polar opposite. Like, the salad, if you will, is the chicken, and salad.
So if we're looking at your plate, we want half of your plate to be animal proteins, and then maybe some veggies on the side.
Swear to God, that makes a huge difference for so many people, because protein is so satiating. And then the best part is protein with fat, which is why I love salmon, because salmon is not just protein, it's also fat, and it's a healthy fat. So you're doing your body so much good, because fat, helps with so many things in your life. People are scared of fat, and it drives me bananas, because fat is so important for your health. It's not even funny, but everyone's made
the majority of our brains, right?
Exactly. You need to feed your brain. So unfortunately, the FDA and USDA have just, brainwashed almost everybody. which is
Yeah.
so sad. But I've been
Today's was definitely anti-fat. And so, yeah, I think we're still coming back from that. I love it. Okay, tell me about your books. Where do people find you? What should they be reading?
Well, the first book that I wrote was called She Does Keto.
Mhm.
I wrote this book back in 2018, and it has 110 recipes that are ketogenic friendly.
Mhm.
Those recipes have more like coconut flour and sweeteners and stuff like that in there because the publisher required me to have some breakfast recipes and desserts and all that kind of stuff. So that has a wide swath of recipes, including, pork recipes, which I don't eat pork personally, but I made them and I had my husband taste test them. But there's also a whole bunch of information in regards to the ketogenic lifestyle and why it's beneficial for women. So you can find that on Amazon.
Okay.
And then my second book, I self-published this. So I will apologize in advance for any sort of printing issues that Amazon does, because the negative reviews on Amazon have been solely because people are like, well, it looks like, this was a used book. I'm like, well, it's not my fault when Amazon is printing these things. But I wasn't waiting around for another publisher. The first publisher that I had, they are the type of publisher that like they have a specific book in mind and then they find the author and the author writes it, whereas they don't take pitches. So I had this idea of writing a salmon-centric book because my audience kept on asking me for salmon-centric recipes. And I'm a little bit of a, play on words kind of person, a little bit of a raunchy type of person when it comes to my speaking, sexual innuendos. So I called it Seduced by Salmon, and there are 69 recipes in it. And I think salmon is like the sexiest food on the face of the planet. So, everything is PG written in my book, but, if there are some sexual undertones that are supposed to come out comedically, which I think I have accomplished. But this book isn't just 69 recipes. I also talk about the 7 different types of salmon, wild caught versus farm raised, where I get my salmon, the different cuts, how to break down a salmon, the different cooking methods, relative fish to salmon, the health benefits, all of it. Like everything you need to know about salmon, you can find in that book.
I love it. And beautiful. Yeah. Like where to source it. Like I'm assuming you're not going to Alaska and pulling it out of the rivers. So
no,
where do you find your best salmon?
Honestly, and a lot of people find this shocking when I say this, I almost exclusively eat farm raised salmon.
Okay.
And a lot of people are like, oh my God, it's like the worst thing in the world for you. But it's not, because back in the 60s, that's when these claims came out where they said farm raised salmon is really bad for you. But that's when there were 0 regulations on salmon. They were basically like the pigs of the fish world, eating whatever the heck they were fed and then getting sick from their food. So then they were injected with hormones and antibiotics and all that kind of stuff, sort of like conventionally raised cows. Right. That being said, nowadays, the regulations are so strict that you should feel so insanely confident with eating farm-raised salmon. A majority of it. There's still some seedy farms out there, so I'm not going to claim everything is amazing. But the sources that I personally consume, like Whole Foods Atlantic salmon or Moe salmon that you can find at Target, for instance, or Marine Harvest is the overarching company for Moe salmon, and they sell their product to Costco and Kroger and Aldi. So you can feel confident eating those farm-raised salmons because they have such strict regulations. And the best part about farm-raised salmon is, number one, it's being tested for all of the things that, a lot of people call negative in the fish world, like mercury, for instance. Right. So they know the levels of mercury in this fish. But secondly, they have control of the feed. So they can feed this fish high in omega-3 fatty acid fish, like mackerel and sardines and krill and stuff like that, which enhances the healthy properties of the fish's omega-3 fatty acids. So in essence, there are more omega-3 fatty acids in this farm-raised fish versus wild caught.
Fascinating. I love that. Well, if you want to learn more, follow GiGi on Instagram, GiGi Eats. Go check out her books. I can't wait to get the Seduced by Salmon one. I love salmon, but yeah, my immediate thing was like, well, after you sashimi and grill it and put it in a dip, like what else am I supposed to do with this? So I'm excited to have more. So I love that. Gigi, I'd love for you to end, like if you could encourage the women who are listening, who are looking at their health, looking at their lifestyles, they want to optimize, what would be your just last encouragement to them as we wrap up the show?
Make yourself a priority. A lot of times women put themselves on the back burner and they think they're supposed to do XYZ QRS for everybody else but themselves. If you don't make yourself a priority, you are not going to be your best self.
Yeah. Right. I love it. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Again, Gigi Eats, find her online, and can't wait to hear your guys' stories of how you are able to start paying attention to what you're ingesting physically and spiritually, and communicating, listening to yourself, your body, communicating with your body, and communicating with your loved ones to make sure that you are getting your needs met, that you are prioritizing yourself, and making sure that you have everything that you need to live your most ecstatic life. All right, guys, we'll see you next Wednesday.
Bye. Thank you so much.